Welcome to LifeRing Secular Recovery's annual conference 2021. I'm Dan Kerrigan. I'm board co-chair for LifeRing. And today we have Dr. KJ Foster as our first speaker. Dr. Foster is the founder and CEO of Fostering Resilience, family program director for the Beachcomber Family Center for Addiction Recovery, best-selling author of The Warrior's Guide to Successful Sobriety, and Fostering Resilience for the Family in Recovery. Dr. Foster has authored numerous books, book chapters, and presents locally, nationally, and internationally on the topics of addiction recovery, compassion, drug abuse prevention, mindfulness meditation, shame, and spirituality. Dr. Foster has a PhD in counselor education. She's a licensed mental health counselor, a certified addiction professional, advanced relapse prevention specialist, trauma specialist, and is professionally trained in mindfulness meditation and compassion-focused therapy. Dr. Foster's YouTube channel, Fostering Resilience, is how we found out about Dr. Foster. And we're so excited to have her here today to talk with us. She actually did a YouTube video about LifeRing, and we'll post a link to that in the chat during this meeting. Dr. Foster has 12 years of experience working with individuals and families to help them overcome substance abuse and lives in Boca Raton, Florida. So welcome, Dr. Foster.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're so glad you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with Fostering Resilience. What motivated you to get started in addiction recovery?
In addiction recovery, what motivated me was my own recovery and that of my son. So I have a lot of experience as someone who is a family member. My ex-husband struggled with substance abuse. He was the first one in the family to really have his addiction progress. And so it started there, and there's a long story to that. There's a lot of history, but I became very codependent. My first addiction was codependency. And when he and I divorced, it was a very traumatic experience. And my son, at that point in time, my oldest son, began to struggle with his own addiction. And so as that progressed, my codependency progressed. And as people know who are familiar with codependency, I started to experience the progressive symptoms. And what happens often with progressive symptoms is you can develop your own mental illness or your own substance use disorder. And that's when I first started to struggle with my own addiction to alcohol, and which was very, it was very surprising. That's not quite the right word for it. Because I was never the one who was struggling. I spent so many years focusing on my husband and his addiction, and then to be experiencing my own was a difficult experience, as it is for anyone. But that's when I entered into recovery, and I decided, because of the experience that I had in the transformation of my own life, the transformation of my son's life, and how much better. I mean, we not only recovered, but our lives are so much better than they ever were before, that I wanted to change careers and do something really significant in terms of giving back. So I wanted to work with especially families. I wanted families to know that they could recover. I wanted to educate families, because I think that's such an important part of the process, to help them to understand that they make a difference, that they have an impact, that it matters that they participate in their loved ones' recovery. So I completely changed careers. I was in the hospitality industry for most of my career, and was supported and encouraged by my current husband, who I met in sobriety, and he was working in the field. He had changed careers as a result of his recovery. And so I decided to update my master's degree. I already had a master's degree in mental health, but I had never pursued it. I just continued in the hospitality industry, um, and so I updated my master's degree, and the Beachcomber, which is where I work now, is the family program director, Joe Bryan, the owner. It's a very small treatment center, family owned and operated. Gave me my first job in the field, and I started there as an intern 12 years ago. So
Wow,
that was
that's
a big,
awesome.
long-winded
No,
answer.
no, it's a great story. I love how you have the personal experience with with recovery yourself,
Yeah.
and bring I know the importance of that, and bringing it into your work. For me as a volunteer, and the other people I see volunteering at LifeRing, the conveners of our meetings, they have a passion for helping others, and it helps their own sobriety. So it's something that we encourage, I think, rather frequently. At least I do when I'm talking to conveners and other people at LifeRing, and say, hey, you want to great things for your own sobriety, and help other people, and um, keeps our sobriety more intact, stronger. But it's
Absolutely.
that, but you've had quite a journey, because you've gotten to a point where you've achieved so much, and you're quite qualified for what you do. When in the LifeRing video you did on your YouTube channel, which we're posting a link for here in the chat. It was one of our members saw that and said, that's the best explanation of LifeRing I've ever heard. And he's a hardcore volunteer, so for you to come up with the explanation, it was wonderful. It's like a tutorial on LifeRing. So how did you find LifeRing, and what motivated you to do the video?
Well, I was, I had been doing my channel for, I don't even know how long. I started it in August of 2018. So depending upon when I did that video, I think it was maybe in early 2019. Maybe I was 6 months or so. My whole goal with the channel was really to get information out there to the families, because right away when I started working at Beachcomber, the owner had me working with families because of my experience, because of my background, and having experienced recovery from all angles. Basically, he put me together with working with and helping the family members. And what I was hearing from the family members over and over again is, first of all, them never hearing of something like Al-Anon. They had no awareness that there are programs out there for them. And so it started me thinking that, if I could just get it out there in a bigger way, like I hear I'm impacting the families that I'm working with, which is great. But I started to, watch YouTube myself, and I started to think to myself, this is a great platform. I started to research, and there weren't a lot of recovery channels out there that were producing information. So I thought, well, I'm just going to start doing this sort of like I started as a hobby. Like, I'm just going to make these videos, I'm going to put them out there. And so one of the first things I started to think about in terms of topics that would be valuable to people uh, is alternatives to 12-step recovery. Because I know for me that when I first began my own recovery journey, that 12-step recovery was the only recovery program that I was aware of. It was the only game in town, so to speak. It was, and I happen to live in an area where, we have a ton of recovery meetings, lots of, it's one of the recovery capitals of the country. There's just so many treatment centers here. And yet at the time, I didn't know any of this. I was directed to AA, because my issue was alcohol. I was directed to AA. I didn't know that there was anything else. And so I've experienced some of the frustrations with AA groups and some of the concepts of 12-step recovery, that when I started to learn that there were other programs out there, I was really excited by that, and I wanted to go out and explore them and experience them and see what they were like. So I got this idea of I'm just going to search and see what other groups and what other programs are out there. And that's what I did. And the first one I found was Smart Recovery. And so I did a video on Smart Recovery. And then I did a video on Dharma recovery. And then I think my next video was LifeRing. I found LifeRing. And what really excited me about LifeRing, and I think why the video was so thorough, so to speak, I mean, I was really excited about it and really delved into learning as much as I could because it aligned so much with my own belief system, with what I learned. You know, you mentioned that I'm advanced certified in relapse prevention. I actually train people in relapse prevention and have my own relapse prevention program now. But how that all started was when I first began working at Beachcomber. I was very fortunate in that very early on, Joe Bryan brought in a gentleman named Terry Gorski, who is very prominent and well known, or he just actually passed away this past year, unfortunately. But he's written 29 books. He's was an expert on relapse prevention. And so I was very blessed in that I was trained by him. And not only was I trained by him and all of the other therapists that work at the Beachcomber, but I was selected to co-facilitate relapse prevention groups with him and got to do that for a period of 2 years, twice a week. And that's how I eventually created my own relapse prevention program. But the point of it is that this addicted self versus the sober self was and is a key component in terms of understanding how substance use disorders take over the brain, take over our minds. And so your LifeRing's addicted self and sober self is very much aligned with what I teach in relapse prevention in terms of the addicted self versus what I call the true self. Our true self. Our true self really gets, taken over by the addiction. So you start out. What I was trying to think of earlier when I was talking about how my ex-husband was the first person to experience an addiction in my family, our family at the time. And we were together for 22 years, and it was 17 years of struggling to try and change different drinks and just trying to manage his addiction. And so what I was thinking of, it was really ironic that ultimately in the end I experienced my own addiction to alcohol. But I saw firsthand how slowly over time that addiction with him, with me, with my son, it happened a little quicker, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But very slowly over time, it just starts to deplete you of all of your strength and all of your power, and basically takes over who you are. It just gains control, and it becomes the most powerful part of who you are when you're in that active addiction. And so for some people, it happens very quickly. For some people, it happens slowly over time. Depending upon the substance that you use, obviously, it can happen faster. Like my son was addicted to oxycodone, so that happened much quicker than some people who maybe start out as social drinkers and then become addicted over time. But in the end, when you become addicted, which is basically a severe substance use disorder, right? They're diagnosed as mild, moderate, severe. When we're talking about severe, we're talking about addiction. You're addicted, and generally most people become physically dependent, and when that happens, your true self is taken over. So I look at it like LifeRing does. It's a muscle that becomes the most powerful part of who you are, and your true self is like that atrophied muscle that, has no strength, no power. And the process of recovery is all about building that true self stronger and stronger and stronger, and weakening the addiction by not feeding it, not exercising it, letting it
Yes.
get weaker, until the true self becomes strong enough to once again be the part of you that's in control, and that's making
Yeah.
the decisions and is dictating everything. And that takes time for that to happen. But like I said, I think that that's very much aligned with what LifeRing teaches. We're not forever powerless. We become
Mm.
powerless
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the addiction, but we don't stay powerless.
Yeah, that was a tough one for me to swallow. And you and before our this recording, you and I spoke, and the powerlessness is how do we? Yeah, it's a tough thing to swallow when you walk into a recovery and they're gonna and you hear that you have no power and you're never gonna have any power. It just feels to me it feels disempowering. This shirt I'm
Right,
wearing, it's a LifeRing shirt, and on the back it says
right,
Empower Ring.
right.
So
Yes,
it's so
empowering,
so life
empowered.
life ring empower ring. And the diagram you're talking about is this in our this is our one of our books, How Was Your Week? And
Mhm.
it's got the alcoholic
Yes,
self and the sober self. So
yes.
the alcoholic self being really big early on in sobriety, and then later your sober self takes over, gets stronger. So your
I
description is
love that.
me too. We're based on three S's: sobriety, secularity, and self-help. And
Mhm.
there ought to be a fourth S, which is simplicity. So
Right.
a simple diagram like that, and then just the concept that we can regain our power. That's
Mhm.
motivation for me. That's motivation to be free of drugs and alcohol.
And not only can we regain our power, but we can become more powerful than we ever were the
Absolutely.
before the addiction, which is, to me, what I experienced, what my husband has experienced, my current husband, and unfortunately my ex-husband is still in active addiction, and my son has experienced. It's, because you take that away from the equation. And in a lot of cases with people, they become more powerful than they ever even knew that they were capable of being, because of the alcohol and or drugs that were, depleting them of power, and they didn't even realize it. Because in the beginning, when people drink and use drugs, sometimes it's really about this false sense of it giving us something, right? It's giving us strength and power. For me, it relieved anxiety, and then what I didn't realize is that over time, not only was it relieving the anxiety, but it was taking more with it, as I kept drinking. So yeah, not only are we not forever powerless, but we can become, and often will become, much more powerful than we ever were before. Which, I
Yes.
mean, to me is like uh hopeful, it's exciting, it's truthful. And so that was one of the things I really struggled with in 12-step recovery, when I would meet people and they would say, you're going to be forever powerless, and you're going to be recovering forever. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm like destined to, it's just a very hopeless way of a hopeless mindset, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
Having that mindset of just, resigning yourself to, like, this is going to be my life forever. And that's just not what I've found. And so I don't buy that. I don't buy into that at all.
Yeah, you seemed really excited about that point in your video,
Yeah.
and it's just, and
Yeah.
I was like, this is awesome. I love that you have that philosophy and you're taking that philosophy into your treatment of people in a treatment center. So I think that message of hope and and the possibility of becoming so much greater in a way that you'd never imagined before it's a real motivator.
I
It's a
have to
motivator
tell
for
you
me.
though that there are some people, because we are the facility that I work at, we are a 12-step based facility, in that
Mm,
we facilitate 12-step engagement. That's what we
yeah.
do, where we teach the steps. We encourage people to engage in 12-step recovery. And 12-step, don't get me wrong, I participated in 12-step recovery for nearly 12 years, and it really saved my life. And I recommend the steps to anyone and everyone because I think that they're really great. It's just some of the ideology and the concepts that and the way people convey it to people that I have a problem with. So I have had like plenty of times with people that I work with who are, hardcore 12-step people who are like, don't call yourself recovered, and and you're going to be forever powerless. And so I don't know if this is going to make any sense or not, but I was just thinking of this the other day because, people will equate being addicted, trying to help people that don't get it, that just don't understand. I've heard people equate it to like a strawberry allergy, but I was thinking of, what's really common are peanut allergies, right? Like there are a lot of people who are allergic to peanuts. And so when you're allergic to peanuts, how do you find out? You find out because you have this terrible reaction, to peanuts. And so when you become addicted to alcohol or other drugs, you have it manifests in like really unpleasant behavior and experiences. And so the goal is then to not ingest the alcohol or the drugs. And with peanuts, you're not going to ingest the peanut. You're going to stay away from you're going to be really careful about what you eat to make sure that it doesn't have peanuts in it. But let's say the compulsion is that you're addicted to these peanuts. So you go to the store when you're, in the midst of that addiction, and your compulsion is, I really want to go down that peanut aisle and I really want to buy that bag of peanuts, and at that point in time, when you're addicted, you're powerless because the addiction is the part of you that's going, go down that aisle, go get those peanuts, go buy those peanuts, even though when you eat the peanuts, you're going to have an allergic reaction. It's nonsensical. It doesn't make sense, but that's how addiction operates. But through recovery, what happens is you get strong enough and powerful enough that you can go in the grocery store and not feel the compulsion to want to go down the peanut aisle and eat the peanuts when you know that the peanuts are going to make, are going to cause a really bad reaction. So it's that, to me, it's that understanding of, I'm eventually going to have the power to be able to not have to go down that peanut aisle, but that takes time to build back that strength and that power to be able to make that choice and not even have a desire to go down the peanut aisle. Does that make sense, or does
it does indeed, and it seems to me like I meet a lot of people who are new to recovery in our meetings, and getting somebody new to understand that they can get there, that they will get there, because there is a feeling of hopelessness, and there's a feeling that they're not going to be able to ever be able to resist. And how can I possibly resist because I've had so much trouble before? That how's that going to change? And so it's and I think for me, in my own case, in my own sobriety, I've been sober for a long time, and it's time really makes a difference.
It is.
And I think that sometimes giving hope to others is just the fact that I have all this sober time, and I can just being sober. So somebody who is just being sober can be an inspiration and a hope to other people. And
Right.
I think that's just that's something about the peer support type of recovery that we do that can be so hopeful and and so encouraging to people. I think people who have long time sobriety, I'm always encouraged when they come back and they're willing to help these people who are brand new, like you're saying. They just don't know how in the world can I ever avoid this compulsion to go down the aisle, where at least they put a lot of grocery stores now, they'll put the booze on one aisle, and I go down the other one.
Exactly.
So yeah, but it's it is mysterious, but there is so much hope in I think in showing people like the ways that you're showing them, and in the self-empowerment focus. And I mean, you mentioned 12 steps too. One thing that I think is really cool about LifeRing is the personal recovery plan philosophy of whatever works for you works. So we have people who were religious who come to LifeRing. We're not a religious organization. It's non-religious, and so, but they like to keep their religion separate from their recovery program. So it's we try not to judge other recovery platforms or whatever works for people. If it's yoga, if it's meditation, if it's exercise, if it's a 12-step program or whatever else it is. There's the book, our Recovery by Choice, is our workbook, and you highlighted that in your video as well.
Right.
And so that's part of the whole idea, is to do what works for you, and then have your peer support group reinforce you in the things that are working. Have that toolkit for yourself, as long as people know. But it's I'm really, really, really enjoying our conversation so much. I'm so grateful for your LifeRing video, and I do hope that our members and conveners who are here watching this spread the word about that video, because it's so cool. If somebody wants to learn about LifeRing, I say just go to Dr. Foster's video. We don't have to make one. So it's really neat, and so I'm so happy you decided that you to take the time to come over here and talk to us today. And even though we're on opposite ends of the country, I'm out in California, and everybody's been so excited about this and the planning of this meeting, and so we're so happy for you to give us your time and your energy today, and share your passion for recovery. So thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have a chance to do this again in the future. So wonderful. Well, thanks. We'll end this session then now, and move on to our next session. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Foster.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.